Today on CityCast Portland, we're talking about why the idea to fund cops with climate dollars isn't going as smoothly as some had hoped, and we have updates on our state hospital's troubling patient care record. Plus, why City Hall is shutting down a beloved, nearly half a century-long summer tradition at a Brooklyn neighborhood park. I'm your host, Claudia Meza, and joining me are Willamette Week City Hall reporter Sophie Peel and Oregonian homelessness and mental health reporter Lillian Mongeau Hughes. You guys, always a pleasure to have you both on the show. How's it going?
Hi, Claudia. It's going well.
Great.
Did you say great, Lillian?
I said great. I did. That was not totally true, but I said it.
Didn't feel true. I got to tell you, it sounded like you went
great.
Like when you drop something and you go great. That's what it sounded like.
The world is on fire, but here we are. So
great.
Let's do it.
Well, we usually kick things off with an opening question to help any new listeners get to know our guests a little better. And today's is based on some reporting by Willamette Week's Garrett Andrews, who wrote about why the Brooklyn Park water slide in Southeast Portland is being shut down by Portland Parks and Recreation. A little background on this water slide, because I had not heard of it. So it's like not a normal slip and slide. It's massive. It's about 100 feet long, 20 feet wide. It's a strip of, polyethylene sheeting that drapes the side of that pronounced hill in Brooklyn Park. Most people know that hill because you go sledding there when there's enough snow. Now, this slide is part of a nearly 50-year neighborhood summer tradition that's been used by the Brooklyn Park Summer Youth Program since 1978. And that's like this all volunteer funded program, pretty much run by local parents. Super cute. Now, the water for the slide is provided by neighbors, and the application and the storage of the slide is now managed by the Friends of Brooklyn Park. That's another citizen association. So ultimately, it's like a homegrown, unaffiliated city park activity. And after all these years, for some reason, this year, Portland Parks decided that they were going to ban the slide because they're saying it's causing damage to the grass underneath and around it. Now, here's a quote from them. To ensure the park's grounds remain well-maintained and accessible for the entire community, we are unable to permit the setup of large plastic water slides on the turf. But here's what I find interesting. All this came about after a staff member from Portland Solutions, that's the city's homelessness and livability office, found a person sleeping on the water slide, which had been damaged by a fire. After that incident, now the slide is an issue. Again, Claudia Conspiracy Corner, but I'm just saying that's interesting because it's like not been an issue for 50 years and the grass looks exactly the same. So anyhow, my question to you both is, in what other ways could our city kill a child's joy?
Well, I have a few examples.
Oh, perfect.
There used to be a second grade Portland Parks and Rec / public schools program where you could learn to swim at the Portland pools. You'd get bused there to your local community pool and get lessons. There was a pilot project. As far as I know, children learned to swim, but then the next year they were like, nope, just kidding. So my kids spent all year looking forward to that, and then it didn't happen.
Aw.
I know. And it's a really good idea. Don't even get me started on drowning is the number one after gunshot wounds is the number one killer of children. So it would be really nice if we could fix that by teaching them how to swim. Lots of other communities manage this, but we do not. I'll stop there. That's my one. You could kill a child's joy by doing a thing you already did and not actually providing full access to Portland public school children during the day when they could actually get swim lessons. Also, it'd be great if you taught them how to read, but that's not really the city's.
Well, that's not really the
job.
I mean,
it's not the city's job. But it's broadly, yes. But
broadly,
is
okay.
that the city doesn't actually pay? Yeah.
I just imagining P-Bop being like, okay, we'll try harder. Jeez, I don't know. What about you, Sophie?
Read more.
Well, I think Portland is just really good at overcorrecting. So something bad happens and then they really overcorrect to an extreme level. But I could see if one kid got bonked by another kid on a swing in a Portland park, it wouldn't totally surprise me if Portland Parks just snipped all the swings off.
Just banned swings.
Just cut them all off.
We're banning swings and slides.
Yeah.
Both of those things are dangerous, objectively speaking. There's really good research that shows that kids doing risky-ish things like swings and slides when they're younger, helps give them a body awareness and a mental ability to assess
Gauge risk.
Gauge risk to assess sort of like logical-ish decisions about the risk that they're going to take next. And that stays through your whole life. And a lot of those neurons, the ability to like catch yourself when you fall, like all of that stuff develops really early. So giving kids the opportunity to do, big gross motor movements like going down a plastic slide on a hill in a city park in the summer are actually really, really good for kids and therefore the whole community.
More slides.
More slides.
Well, thank you both for your answers. Let's take a quick break here. And when we come back, Sophie is going to drop us right in the middle of this signature verification drama surrounding the ballot initiative to hire more police. Okay, Sophie, so this ballot initiative to hire more police officers was already controversial because of its funding source. And now it's even somehow getting our city auditor chewed out by our Secretary of State. What is going on?
Yeah, it's become a whole mess. At issue, like you said, is the ballot measure that would reroute 25% of the city's climate tax revenues to hiring around 400 Portland police officers. So at its base is like very controversial. I think kind of divides the city in a lot of ways. So how signature verification works is that the campaign behind this initiative submits as many signatures as they possibly can. The campaign says they submitted 63,000 signatures to the city. The city elections office then does like the first layer of, vetting of those signatures. And then whatever it has left, it sends to the county elections office for sampling. So after the city did its kind of first layer of vetting, it transmitted 55,800 and some signatures to the county elections office. Then the county elections office takes 10% of the total pool of signatures and starts trying to verify them. And in the first sample, the campaign did not reach the number of verified signatures that they would need to actually make it onto the ballot. So after they failed that first sample, the county is now looking at a second sample and doing that same process. And if that second sample also fails, then the ballot is dead. But a lot of noise has happened as these signatures are being counted. So right when kind of the first sample looked really bad, like it wasn't going to reach that threshold, the campaign behind this initiative called Safer Portland put out this like explosive press release, very dramatic, basically saying that the city elections office was erroneously throwing out sheets full of signatures and that they were politically motivated to kill this ballot measure because they really didn't substantiate these allegations, but they said that they basically intimated that elections officers were like biased against police and therefore they were trying to corrupt this signature counting process. So like they were basically going after the integrity of the city elections office. Of course, the city elections office and the county elections office said none of these are true. We're just following state law and procedure. So then the next day, which I think certainly came as a surprise to me, is that Secretary of State Tobias Reed actually sent a letter to the city auditor basically saying, clean up your elections division. He did not say specifically what his gripe was procedurally, but he basically said the communication from your office has been bad. If people are this confused, it means that something's gone, awry here. He certainly did not intimate that like something politically motivated was going on in the elections office, but he basically said, if this process continues as messily as it has continued, this will give, election deniers basically another way to go after vote by mail in our election system in Oregon, which of course is the last thing we need. Secretary Reed's letter went to the city auditor's office. The city auditor's office then yesterday responded in length, basically saying this was our process. This is every step we took. We have been transparent. We have been responsible. We have been counting, correctly. I mean, it has just absolutely devolved into everyone fighting with everyone else. Yeah. So that's where we're at now.
That's so interesting that Tobias Reed went that route, because there's no way he doesn't understand how that might validate these unsubstantiated claims.
Yeah, I mean, I think the letter for me, I think there's two ways you can look at that letter. One, Tobias Reed knows something that we don't know, which he is the state's highest elections officer. So maybe he does have more insight into the process and he does think something went wrong. Or I think the other more cynical way you can look at it, and I don't know if this is the case, and I'm not saying necessarily it is, but kind of a little bit more cynical take of like, oh, he's trying to get maybe some political points, right? But I will say Secretary Reed is not like he has not shown himself to be a bombastic, declarative,
For sure.
elected official. Like he has actually been quite cautious, I think. And so to me, that letter, I was just I was super taken aback by that letter. It is just the last thing that I was expecting.
Well, what has Simone Reddy, who is our city auditor, like, has she responded at all?
Yes. So the city elections office has responded. They've basically said, and yesterday they kind of put out two different things that said, here's where we're at with the process. The first sample failed. The county is currently counting the second sample. And here is every step we've done. And they also supplied a lot of information about like, for, why they disqualified sheets of signatures. And there's a number of reasons they can. And so they basically just provided like a wealth of information to show like, hey, these claims are false. We have been transparent. We have been, we have followed every single law and procedure. So that's where we're at right now. It's a little unclear, like, the county, I think, is probably halfway through the second sample. They have to be done by August 5th. Now, if that second sample also fails, the ballot initiative is dead. Unless, the only recourse at that point that the campaign has is to sue. I don't know if that's the case, but I will say they did a whole legal memo from their lawyers about why they thought this process was botched. And so I don't think it is like beyond the pale to think it's a possibility that they would sue.
One of the first things I remember even reading about this ballot initiative was that people were complaining that they were getting signatures under false pretenses. And I don't know if that was ever fully, verified or where we left off with that. But I feel like this ballot initiative from the very beginning has been just getting a lot of attention.
Yeah, that's the other part I didn't mention. That's, I think, really important. It's separate from the allegations from Safer Portland, but the campaign itself has been subject of like dozens of complaints filed with Secretary Reed's office about basically signatories being misled about the ballot measure. And so, people have said the signature gatherer said that this was going to cut down 911 times, which is not. We don't know that. That is not what this initiative would necessarily do. They said it would, beef up our like EMS response. Things that are just not what this ballot language is saying. And so there's allegations kind of flying in both directions. They're in different lanes a little bit, but like both are alleging like unethical behavior on, the part of the other party. So it's gotten super messy. I believe that investigations into the complaints against the campaign are ongoing. I don't know like the status of them right now, but yeah.
Do we know at all, aside from like, oh, the signature doesn't match up to whatever signature we have at hand, do we know why they would just say that this is not a valid signature?
Yeah, so I will say, if you look at the information that the city auditor and the county elections office have provided, the vast number of signatures that weren't verified were because the person was not registered to vote in Oregon, which means it's an invalid signature, or they didn't live in the city of Portland.
Oh, that's so interesting.
There are fewer signatures that were invalidated because, their signature didn't match. That's a much more minor bucket than either not registered to vote in Oregon or do not live inside the city of Portland. Now, I think the Safer Portland campaign is taking greater issue with hundreds of sheets of signatures the city elections office threw out before they even sent the signatures to the county. And those are sometimes about like they botched the date that the signature gatherer botched the date on the bottom of the sheet, or the signature gatherer's signature on the bottom of the sheet doesn't match their license closely enough. So I think that's where the campaign is really honing in, is like you guys threw out hundreds of sheets with that contained in aggregate like thousands of signatures, and we're taking issue with that.
Gotcha.
Can I ask, did they actually like throw them out in the trash can, or like they just said we're not counting these?
I don't know if they have like a sheet trash can.
Yeah.
I think I feel quite certain they didn't just throw them in a trash can or put them in a shredder.
Yeah, I was just like wondering, like, if they make their point and the city's like, yeah, okay, good point, we shouldn't have thrown those out. Like, can they go back and look at the signatures again?
I have to imagine that they are keeping those in some capacity in the case that this sort of thing happens. But I actually don't know. Maybe they're in a
I don't think they're in a trash
recycling
can.
facility, a metro recycling facility.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, I guess the plot thickens. I have a feeling this isn't going to be the last we hear about this ballot initiative. I'll be honest. Can I just predict? I 100% think they'll try to sue.
They have money. I mean, I will say,
Yeah.
like, this campaign has a lot of big money behind it. It's got the Portland Police Association, which I think has given $800K to the
Oh, my God.
effort so far. You know,
Yeah.
they've got Jeff Swickard behind it, which is the owner of Big Pink, and he's very, you know, he's got deep pockets. So they have money. I just, I think it's more about do we honestly think we have a case? I think it will be telling if they sue or not about whether they honestly think they have something here or if they are just like, oh, shoot. We don't think we made it. Let's see what we can throw in the water. Yeah.
They caught us. I mean, seriously, getting signatures from people who aren't registered to vote in Oregon, like, come on, guys. Come on. Well, let's take a quick break here. And when we come back, Lillian has more updates on the tragic death of a patient at the Oregon State Hospital. Okay, Lillian, this series you've reported on has been pretty heartbreaking. Would you be able to catch us all up before you fill us in on the latest?
Yeah, I've been working on Oregon State Hospital stuff for a while. The second sort of big investigative piece that we ran, which came after a piece on some whistleblowers who said, things are not good here. We tried to say that this particular patient was at risk of death and nothing happened. And then that patient died. So that was like the first installment that we ran. The second one was on what actually happened to that patient. And what happened was this young man, he was 25 years old, had a tough childhood, was suffering from schizophrenia, got caught up in the justice system, got arrested for resisting arrest, actually. Interestingly, he was at a treatment center trying to get treatment for his meth addiction that he was struggling with. And they were saying, like, no, you can't stay here. And he was like, I refuse to leave. And then the police were called in to get him to leave. And he kicked them. And then he was brought to jail. And that was like kind of the end of his freedom for the rest of his life. So he went to jail. Damn. Then he got transferred to the Oregon State Hospital. And then when he got to the Oregon State Hospital, he spent more than a year of his 3 years there in seclusion, which means in a room by himself with a locked door. There was a window and people paying attention to him like 24/7. So he wasn't, it's not like exactly the same as like a concrete building, but the experts we talked to said that absolutely counts as solitary confinement. And all of the things you can expect from such a long-term solitary confinement would accrue in this case. So the over the year part that I just said, that was like over the entire 3 years, like a year of the time was in seclusion. But the last 7 months of his life, a little more than 7 months, he was in that room the entire time. The rules around seclusion of psychiatric patients indicate that nobody should be in seclusion for more than 4 hours. And that if you get beyond 24 hours, you need to have like this big sort of overview check by all of the heads of the hospital to say like, yes, we should keep going, or no, we need to get this person out. Anyway, like the goal should be less than 4 hours and definitely never more than 24. And we're talking about 250 plus days that this man spent in seclusion. He ultimately died while he was in seclusion. The final cause of his death was water intoxication, because I guess a symptom of schizophrenia can be and is in like 6 to 20% of cases that you just like drink way too much water, which can kill you. And he did that like while being observed, and people didn't like note that it was happening in a way that could be dangerous. And that is ultimately what killed him. But when the initial reports came out, it was unclear what had killed him because there were 3 possible causes of his death in the 24 hours before he died. There were people without the right training who gave him a medication. Turns out that wasn't what killed him, but like they should have had training and they didn't do all the things they were supposed to do. And then he also had been jumping. He'd been like swan diving, they kept calling it. He'd been jumping headfirst off of the counter and toilet in his bathroom area, which he was known to do. And the bathroom area was typically locked and it was open that day, which is like a whole other thing. But anyway, he was jumping off and he appeared to fall and hit his head, and that he died immediately after that happening. And so the initial idea was that he'd been killed by the fall. But now it seems like maybe he fell because the water intoxication thing like hit and he had a seizure, and the seizure actually, you know, made him fall instead of the other way around. That happens in murder mysteries all the time, right? Like, oh, it was a heart attack, not like before the car crash. And since then,
Yeah.
things have happened. I will say the last part is worth saying from our story. We based our story on tons of public records, but also some leaked documents and his medical records, which his sister, who is his legal guardian, and the lawyers for his estate shared with us. So what was clear from those in which we put in our story was that doctors at this institution knew, like, you have to sign off every 4 hours. And a doctor, from what we can tell, did in fact sign off every 24 hours.
Oh, interesting.
I'm sorry, every 4 hours. And then every 24 hours, they did do that review process. So the head of the hospital, the chief medical officer, who at the time was Sarah Walker, we saw 54 records of her signing those documents herself. So there's no question that the medical professionals who should have known the rules around this, like
weren't
knew
aware.
what was happening.
Yeah.
They were
Totally.
aware, yes. Okay, so since we published that story, and I want to be careful to say not all of this like comes from us having published the story, right? Like some of these things were already in the works, but a few things have happened. One of the big ones is that they hired their 5th superintendent, which is something they'd been working on for a while. So this is their 5th superintendent, not ever, their 5th superintendent in 3 years. There's just been really constant turnover. Sarah Walker, who I just mentioned, who was the chief medical officer, was doubling as superintendent for a little while. That didn't go great. After Kenneth Haas died, that's the patient we've been talking about, Tina Kotek basically was like, she's got to go. So Sarah Walker was out after that. They put in a temporary person. Then they put in another temporary person. Now they've hired a permanent person. So this guy's name is Sean Murphy. I haven't met him yet or spoken to him. We just have like the announcement that they gave us, but we did look into his background, and he was an executive at Western State Hospital in Washington State. Before he got there, they had lost their federal certification for being like a hospital that the feds were willing to spend Medicaid money on.
Okay.
They did not regain it during his tenure. So we raised some questions about like what his ability would be to bring, a hospital back. Like he couldn't bring them back into compliance. There's major issues at Oregon State Hospital. Will he be able to address them? That is the question we will all watch for the next couple of years. Another thing that has happened since is that Sejal Hathi, who has been the director of the Oregon Health Authority, she announced that she would be stepping down on August 1st. We don't know exactly why. It's sort of like health and family reasons given, right? But we do know that in the week before she made that announcement, we had found out that there was an investigation opened into her leadership. We also know that we and other news organizations had been asking questions about what she knew about the situation with the number of long-term confinements that were happening at the hospital beforehand. Because I should say, what happened to Kenneth Haas nobody else died in seclusion that we know of. But what happened to him happened to other people. Like other people were in long-term seclusion as well. And we don't know exactly how many, but we think like at least 7 or 8 people had spent, many weeks in seclusion, if not months.
So what I'm hearing is that the press was circling, trying to get more info from the head of the Oregon Health Authority, who, by the way, isn't just in charge of this hospital. They're in charge of
Correct.
It's just so much.
They're in charge of so much. And I think there's a fair question about how our government runs is like, should the health authority own all of the things that it owns? Because it's like so many different things.
Dude,
but
they're like tracking down, chlamydia patients. Do you know what I mean? Like
they're doing,
they're doing so much.
So
they were
much.
in charge of like COVID. It's just, that's too much.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a question about the agency. But yes, she stepped down as the questions got tighter and tighter. And the other thing that's happened is Kenneth Haas's family has sued. So they are suing the hospital via the state, but then they are also suing many of the doctors who worked on his case, including his sort of like primarily assigned psychologist, who was, it looks like from medical records, like the main reason he stayed secluded. But they're pointing out some things that we already knew, like there was really no treatment plan for him. There were statements made, in his medical records indicating that they had kind of given up on being able to help him in any way. Like they use this term. They said he had a terminal psychotic illness, and that was something that was put into his medical records multiple times. It's not a formal medical term.
That's basically them saying, we can't help this person. Wow.
And we had seen a good amount of evidence of that, including from staffers who've spoken to us. So if I have like 35 more seconds, I would say if you are somebody who has worked at the Oregon State Hospital and you can weigh in on the staffing situation there, that is what we're looking into next. And I'd love to hear your thoughts.
What's your email that they can hit you up at?
lmhughes@oregonian.com.
Cool. I'm just curious what the governor is saying now. Because, I mean, I know that she put some pressure in, but there's no way that she's not aware of what's happening and how bad this looks for the state as a whole.
I mean, they're broadly, all of the officials are saying, like, yes, it's really bad, mea culpa. We have a new superintendent now. Everything's going to be better.
Oh, Sean Murphy.
Sean Murphy.
Yeah. Who, by the way, sounds like the lead singer of like an East Coast hardcore punk band. Does he not?
I didn't spend a lot of time listening to hardcore punk when I was on the East Coast.
Sean Murphy.
You do these great segues into like pop culture, and I'm like, oh, you lost me.
Sorry. Well, half of our listeners are also there, so you're in good company. Sophie, do you have any questions before we wrap up?
I'm just like, I'm so curious. I mean, I'm so curious, like, why the Oregon State Hospital is so broken. Like, is it, do they say it's because they don't have enough money? Do they say it's because, like, they have too many people and the acuity is so high in that they like have no option but to put people with the kind of the most severe behavioral issues in seclusion? Like, are these like somewhat not understandable things, but like, is there like, what do they say about how something like this could have possibly happened?
That is such a good question. The one person who really talked to us, who was at a high level, who really talked to us about why this happened, was the former chief of psychology. His name was Ryan Bell, and he was the chief of psychology when Haas was in seclusion. And he basically said what Sophie just sort of summarized. We had no option. Like, this was the only option. We didn't have staff who knew how to handle him. And like, the violence was out of control overall, not necessarily just with this patient. And so some patients just had to be put into solitary seclusion. It was our only option. Nobody else has said that, right? Like, that's not the official line from the state.
Yeah.
They have said every time we've asked anything, like, we won't talk about it. It's patient specific. So they haven't really given us an answer. They have said, you know, there were rules that changed about who had to be taken into the hospital and when. And this is to do with another like ongoing lawsuit that started because people who had mental illness were being left in jails and not getting moved into the hospital for treatment. So they've changed the rules around that, and they're moving people in more quickly. But it also means that you're getting high acuity people who are already just as involved, who are coming to the state hospital, and then there's a time limit on how long they can stay there. So in the last decade, little less than a decade, there's been a real shift at the Oregon State Hospital from patients being there long term and having time to like get better or potentially not get better but be in a safe place, to people who are trying to be like restored for trial on a like 6-month circle window. And that, I don't think that's been great for them. There is a pipeline problem with mental health professionals just in general that is not certainly the Oregon State Hospital's fault. Getting in enough qualified staff, so just sufficient numbers even of qualified staff, is a real challenge.
Well, I have a feeling that with this story as well, more is going to keep coming up. So I have a feeling you're going to be back, Lillian, which is yay, which is great. And I meant that. Great. Which is great.
Great for me to be back. Not great how much this is broken.
Yeah, no, exactly. Before we wrap up, we actually have some shout outs from members of our CityCast Portland Neighbors program. That's one of the perks of being a paid member of this podcast, is you have the opportunity to shout out a local business or organization that you love. And Sophie is going to kick us off.
Yes, I have one here from listener Nathan B.R. He says, the Rockwood Market Hall. It's right on the Max Blue Line towards Gresham, and wow, is it a flourishing space. It's a true melting pot of so many cultures and food, with 15 plus vendors, markets, cultural events, and a water playground. The community really comes together to make this a very special place in our city.
It's such a cool sounding place. I want to go.
So Rockwood, I think it's this weird, like I think it's technically in Gresham, but it feels... It is a fascinating neighborhood, by the way. This is it's a fascinating neighborhood right between Portland and Gresham. I think technically it's in Gresham. But anyways, now I want to go.
Yeah.
Go, Nathan.
Yeah. Thanks for that one. Here's another one from Jonathan B. that says, Chill and Phil on North Lombard is a great community space with a lot of great food carts, games for people of all ages, and all kinds of boozy and NA bevs. I gotta second that. There's pool tables, there's like an arcade, there's a bar. People do a lot of like open mic nights. It's a really sweet space. And all the food carts are awesome. So yeah, I'm also shouting that out. And a big thank you to Nathan and Jonathan for writing in their shout outs. And a special thank you to Taman N and Kathy G for becoming CityCast Portland neighbors this week. Awesome, you guys. Thank you so much. When you join, we'd also be happy to read your shout outs of all the places that you love in Portland. And you also get a bunch of other cool perks like ad-free listening and invites to member-only events. You can join at membership.citycast.fm. That's it. That's our show. You guys, thanks again for hanging out with me this morning. I appreciate it. I appreciate all the hard work that you guys do. Sophie, you published 3 stories in one day. I just want to give that a shout out. That was insane. And they were all good.
That wasn't out of a desire to do this. My editor is gone right now. And so I am interim editor. And also I have to write a lot of blogs. So I was like, what more can I write?
Oh, man. Well, again, thank you so much, you guys. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks, Claudia.
Thanks, Claudia.
That's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thank you so much for listening. Our production team this week was John Atariani, Julia Fiaioni, Rachel Monahan, Jesse Wiza, Lizzie Goldsmith, Francisco Kilgore, and myself. Original music by Jenny Conley and Stephen Drizos. Additional music by All the Kimonos. Our ad music is by Sven Lindvall and Sarah the Instrumentalist from Epidemic Sounds via Getty Images. We'll be back Monday morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's or possibly the Rockwood Market Hall.